everyone, welcome to another lecture on the tender place. Now this one's going to be divided into, I know that we're already dividing the tender place into several lectures, but this particular lecture on the language in the tender place is going to be divided into several parts. Again, would start this lecture with the critique by Robert Bernard Shaw that Hughes's language is almost resonant to that of William Shakespeare. Now, when we say William Shakespeare, there are several of these William Shakespeare quotes that are really famous, right? Like the phrase that he coined up, "a pound of flesh," which is sort of, interchangeable with the phrase in the Bible, "an eye for an eye." Similarly, Shakespeare writing "to be or not to be," or Shakespeare writing I'm trying to think of more quotes from Shakespeare right now. "Within its bending sickles compass comes." So that way, careful consideration of words to sometimes symbolize, sometimes signify, stuff like that. Now, in the tender place, firstly, the title itself, the tender place. When you're talking about somebody's temples and you're calling them the tender place, now usually, whenever you're referring to anybody's temple, you're like, here is where you think from, right? Or when somebody's like, but open up your mind. And so he's calling it the tender place. To perhaps also just about signal how soft Plath was as a person. Then the poem starts with "your temples, comma, where the hair crowded in, comma." Now, usually when you're talking about hair brushing against a surface, hair falling over something, stuff like that. But here he's saying your temples where the hair crowded in. Hair being such a soft thing, but still the temples are so much more tender. She's so much more softer in her head that even when the hair falls, it crowds in. Sort of also reminds us of now whenever when we read romantic sequences in literature, there's often this mention of somebody putting the hair back behind the ear or something like that, right? So in that sense also, where the hair crowded in, so just putting it back as a mental image. That's the kind of imagery that Hughes plays with, and with careful selection of words. Were the tender place. Now here, he could have said anything, was, used to be, but he's chosen the word "were the tender place" because he wants to say that, because yes, he wants to signal a demise, but he wants to signal that demise in not something very complicated, because that demise itself was also very simple, right? It used to be, and then she was put through ECT, and then it wasn't the tender place. So your temples where the hair crowded in were the tender place. Once to check, I dropped a file across the electrodes of a 12-volt battery. It exploded like a grenade. Now here, if you see that a 12-volt battery is not that what can I say? A 12-volt battery, if you were to drop a file, firstly, a file is usually way bigger than the size of a 12-volt battery. But if a file were to be sprung into a 12-volt battery, it would, excuse me for that, again, very nervous while delivering these lectures. A 12-volt battery would not technically cause a file to explode like that, it would probably catch fire or something like that. But because he's building up to that anger, and he also wants to talk about the domestic use of electricity versus the use of electricity then on his wife. He's saying that once to check, I dropped a file across the electrodes of a 12-volt battery. It exploded like a grenade. Um, yes, hyperbole is there, but also a lot of metaphors to explain at what extent may have something affected somebody. Somebody wired you up. Now here he could have also said the nurses, the doctors, etc., etc. So the process is very significant because the process is what happened to his wife. The people who did it, they're very insignificant in that sense to him. That somebody wired you up. Somebody pushed the lever. Because again here also the doctor is very insignificant, right? The one who pushed the lever. The lever is of course significant in the sense that it was used to cause harm to his wife. So somebody pushed the lever. They crashed the thunderbolt into your skull. Now, when you think of the whole process and trigger warning, but I'm going to explain the process of this ECT therapy. That that a metal cap of sorts is somebody is like whoever is about to be subjected to ECT. A metal cap is put on their head, right? They're made to wear a metal cap. Now, here, though he's saying they crashed the thunderbolt onto your skull. Now, the cap itself is very insignificant until and unless there is electricity passing through it. But he's saying that they crashed the thunderbolt. So he's given the cap the name Thunderbolt already because of the fact that when somebody, God forbid, would have been in those times when this therapy was done, made to wear that cap, it's still a thunderbolt of sorts. You know, how lightning chisels anything down. Just the trauma of having to wear that cap and waiting that, you know, now there might be electricity that will pass through it, and boom. In their bleached coats with blenched faces. So in their bleached coats, not white coats, bleached coats. So here again showing the detest, ignorance, insignificance of what they were wearing, but also because he's a poet who likes to describe, he's saying, in their bleached coats with blenched faces, they hovered again. And hovering is usually a term that we use to describe insects and flies and mosquitoes and stuff like that. So they hovered again, like buzzing bees of sorts, to see how you were in your straps. So Plath again is very much significant in all of this, to see how you were in your straps. The straps, of course, are also sort of significant because now they've been tied to Plath. So with language, now here I would just wrap this lecture up, and in the next lecture we will go on with this entire explanation. But in terms of the language, he's expressing his constant love, admiration, care, whatever you would want to say, for Plath, while with these words only, like bleached coats. He's pissed at the doctors, he's pissed at the medical system. They're not wearing white coats, they're wearing bleached coats. They're hovering, they're not moving, they're hovering. The metal cap is not a metal cap anymore, it's like a thunderbolt that's been put on her head. The temples are, there's no hair falling on the temples, or there's no hair brushing against the temples. The hair is crowding the temples because the temples are so beautiful, right? For him, perhaps. Because when, for example, when we read romantic sequences and the hair is falling, say something like this, and somebody tends to put it back, it's like, oh, let me see your face properly. So in that collection of sequence or whatever, the hair is crowding, of course. It's disrupting the view. It's disturbing the view. So the hair is crowding in. Similarly, then of course the file is exploding like a grenade, which is technically not possible with a 12-volt battery. But Hughes wants to say it exploded like a grenade. Somebody wired you up, somebody pushed deliver. So the process is significant to him because that was something that was done to his wife. And then there's anger to not even think of the person who did that. So it's like somebody pushed deliver, somebody wired you up. They crashed. They did not make her wear it. They crashed it. They crashed the thunderbolt, like lightning almost. They crashed it onto her head. Because once it was put on her, of course, like her entire being would have been chiseled down, waiting for the electric shock to be given to her via that metal can. In their bleached coats with blenched faces, I already mentioned that. To see how you were in your straps. And they just did that, and then they just checked how is she okay in her straps. Also sort of making you, if you look at it from that perspective, then they're also sort of making you look at the fact that to him, of course, Plath remains the center of Plath is still a human being. She's still significant. And then the people doing something like that to his human are so insignificant. And then everything that they're doing, everything that they're putting on, the straps and this and that, all of those things are very mechanical. They're all machines. And that's why Robert Bernard Shaw compared Hughes to Shakespeare in Resonance. But here I would also like people to consider that in his language, in some ways, he's also reminding us of, say, Edgar Allan Poe. Because remember, in Telltale Heart tends to be one of his very gory kind of a recollection of a very gory story, basically a very gory recollection of events. So here he is sort of collecting it all or building it up in that way, right? How Edgar Allan Poe built it up slowly and gradually. Hughes is also building it up slowly and gradually, while of course in that entire process detesting what he wants to, making insignificant what he wants to make insignificant. That's about it for this video. Don't forget to do the lesson, guys, so that you can keep up. We'll continue with the lecture on language only in the next video in this series. And also I would just say, keep rereading the tender place if you have an exam. I'm not saying you have to memorize it, but just keep rereading so that because I'm not sure what exam is everybody giving, but usually they do give you a copy or a collection of the poems or the prescribed text that's coming in exams. If it's not, then definitely memorize it, because it's really important to be able to quote in your answers. Don't memorize any answers, try to understand it. That's the entire point of these lectures, that try to understand the poem on every level, from its language to its themes to its tone, everything. And If you like this video, please don't forget to give me a thumbs up as well as subscribe to the YouTube channel, and press the bell icon to stay updated if you're waiting on a lecture. Because if you press the bell icon, it helps you get an instant notification on whenever a new video is uploaded. That's about it. See you in another lecture.